welcome to Dublin, Ian. It's good to see you here.
Thank you.
It's a good win for your boys on the weekend.
Yeah, as days goes out, that was a special one.
Yeah. I wondered when you go to, when you're at a club like Chelsea, there's this tradition of the managers hanging out and having a glass of wine or whatever. Does the same thing happen with the chief executives?
Yeah, we go in the boardroom at all the away games and sort of have a bit of lunch with the opposition. But I think that's the thing in football. As a fan, the rivalry is there every game. But as a business, if you like, slightly different. There's a lot of collaboration between clubs on various issues, and I think that's important. There's a lot of best practice shared, and but we still want to beat them.
Yeah. Was there anything interesting you want to report to us about hanging out with the Chelsea directors on Saturday?
No, they were very quiet, surprisingly, particularly after the game. So.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk to you here about some of the ways in which technology has changed the job of running a football club. So, a lot of this has happened during your own time at Liverpool. Since 2007, you were commercial director, 2011 managing director. Now you're the chief executive. One of the first things that's obviously changed since the 80s, even the 90s, is the globalization of Liverpool's fan base. It's now a gigantic kind of global entity, which has resulted in this enormous growth in TV income, which has put Liverpool into profit, and most of the Premier League clubs, I think, are now making a profit. What's your feelings on the future of this TV growth?
Well, I think as it relates to Liverpool, I think we've always had an enormous fan base, probably since the 70s and 80s and those sort of great successful years. I think the difference in today's era is that we're really able to be in contact and engage with those fans on a much greater scale, be it through digital media, linear television. And I think the Premier League, I was at a meeting yesterday at the Premier League, and we were talking about the fact that it's such a different league to other leagues. Everyone can genuinely beat everybody, at some point. And I think that's getting more and more the case, that, the smaller teams, let's call it, or, have such great revenue now, and that'll get bigger with the advent of the New Deal. And I think what that does is it makes for a great competition, and therefore makes for a great and compelling television product. And I don't see that slowing down. I see that, people want it more and more. It's, you watch it, it is genuinely entertaining. I think the broadcast partners we have, both in the UK and internationally, do a fantastic job of producing, the content in a great format. If you look at the US and what NBC have done with the product and getting it out to so many people, both on free-to-air and pay, it's a fantastic mix of product around the world. And as we've seen from the sales domestically and currently internationally, there's just a huge interest that doesn't seem to wane. I mean,
the TV deals, the domestic deals, have gone up by about 2/3 every 3 years. That's what's happening. It's like they're increasing nearly 70% every 3 years. Can that keep happening, in your opinion?
Yeah, who knows? I think the important thing is to keep the expenditure in check. You don't want to live on the basis that something else will be coming, because I think that's how a lot of clubs got in trouble in the past. Certainly for us, and for, as you mentioned, the clubs in the Premier League now operate in a completely different space, really, more sustainable, financial fair play for those clubs playing in Europe, and cost control measures that we implemented ourselves in the Premier League. And I think that's good for football, because it means that clubs are living largely by their means. It means that, we are, of course, reinvesting a lot of that media money into the squad, but importantly, you have to build a business around it. And that's, as you said, I've been at Liverpool 8 years, and I would say the biggest challenge for me in that 8 years has been building a sustainable business that sits underneath the football.
I mean, there's one of the interesting things that's happened in the last few years is the ease of being able to watch football without having to pay for it. So we all know that a goal is scored 6 seconds later. You can watch it on Twitter. You've got a window until it's taken down. Every fan, pretty much of every team around the world, knows how to find a stream that's going to show their club if they want to see it. So is that something? I mean, what's your feelings on that? Is that going to be a problem for television, or is it something? Is it also an opportunity for the clubs in terms of if people want to watch it on the internet, maybe the clubs can sell it to them that way?
Well, I think the league certainly, again, I can only speak for the Premier League and for Liverpool. We take it very seriously, and there's a lot of work, a lot of effort that goes into curb piracy. But I think at the same time, I spent many years myself living in Asia, and there's an awful lot of copied pirate products, shirts, that type of thing. The one thing I found when you're in Asia is that the person who buys the copied product will never buy the real product. So they're not really the same customer. And I think, as we just said, the amount of people that subscribe to pay TV globally, or subscriptions on the internet to watch football isn't waning. It isn't churning at a rate that is concerning anyone about the odd goal or the odd piece of content appearing. I think it's something that we'll always chase down. But I think people want to watch the 90 minutes. They want to watch the excitement of the whole game, and they're the core of the fan bases of all of the clubs across the world, and that's the product that sucks everybody in.
Well, I mean, this global exposure means that suddenly the club is a much more valuable sponsorship property, and this is what you were doing when you joined Liverpool initially. You were saying that when you joined Liverpool, they had 2 sponsors, and now it's, I think, 34?
Yeah.
And I was looking at it, not even all these sponsors are listed on Liverpool's website, but it's impressive the kind of global reach of those. I think the biggest country from which these sponsors are originating is the United States. There's quite a few from East Asia, some from the UK, some from the rest of Europe. But why is it so appealing to these brands which previously would have had nothing to do with English football? When you were out there selling Liverpool to firms in Indonesia or the United States, what was the thing that you were selling?
Well, what you're selling is the reach and the appeal of this product, and I think with any sponsor over that 8 years, we've always looked to find a sponsor that can use Liverpool's brand and use the reach of Liverpool and its huge supporter base, but also somebody that can bring something back to the club. So you used Indonesia as an example. In the case of Garuda, the national airline of Indonesia, we have a huge fan base across Indonesia, but at the same time that they entered into a sponsorship deal with us as a partner, they were just starting their flights into Europe. So you can see, that it works both ways. You can see that, we mentioned the Chelsea game. We'll have been on the back page of every newspaper in the world on Sunday. We'll have been in, most websites that relate to sport all over the world. And, the pictures that people put across of players in training kit, and there you'll see Garuda front and centre. You'll see Jurgen Klopp interviewed post-game, at our home games, and you'll see Garuda front and centre. So it's about that. It's about giving exposure to their brand. But there's more to it. We use Garuda a lot, as one example, to work with us on our business and the exposure of our business and advice on other things we do commercially across the Indonesian market. And Indonesia is a huge, huge market for us. And I think something like our second or third most followed country on Facebook is Indonesia. So we have more fans there probably following us in Indonesia than we do in the UK because of the size of population.
That's an interesting kind of point because, when you think of Liverpool, you think of what's the identity of Liverpool has to do with the kind of connection between the team and the fans. The Kop, the flags, all the managers going back to Shankly that you see on the flags. Does it become difficult to prevent the core identity of Liverpool from being diluted by the fact that it's not just a club for half of a city in England and, Norway and Ireland and whatever. It's actually got more fans in Indonesia than in the UK. Is there a kind of a tension there between kind of preserving what the club really is and trying to make as much money as you can?
No, I don't think that's the tension. The role, in my role and the people that work with me at Liverpool is to protect that identity. Okay, so we've got to create, the reason that people in Indonesia, as an example, support Liverpool is because of what it represents. So you don't want to change that. It's the core, it's the sort of heart of, and that the history of the football club all sits there in Liverpool, at Anfield, in the business, in the stadium and around it. What we try to do is we try to create as real an experience for a fan anywhere else in the world as the fan who live in, I grew up in Liverpool, supporting Liverpool, and in Liverpool you get it 24/7. It's in the newspaper, you can go to the store, you can go to the stadium, you can see the players around the city, the whole thing is there. But if you live in Hong Kong or the US or anywhere else, it's slightly different. So what we're trying to do with digital media, with retail, is not just trying to take money off people, but give them access to all of that stuff that they want. But it is vital that we retain as much of that, historic heritage and identity of Liverpool as possible. But at the same time, we have to move with the development of football. And that, I have to say, when I joined 8 years ago, that was Liverpool's biggest failing, in my opinion. Yeah. We were too far behind some of our competitors commercially, and actually that damages you when you need to spend and invest, in the transfer market.
One of the ways it strikes me that Liverpool could hang on to the thing that's, the thing that people like about the club, or the things that a lot of fans identify with, has to do with the access of the local community to the games. So when you look at all of the Premier League clubs at the moment, and Liverpool is no exception, gate receipts are going down as a proportion of overall revenue. As the TV money increases, as the sponsorship money increases, people aren't relying so much on gate receipts. So I think in the case of Liverpool, it's about 20% gate receipts at the moment, 40-40. And you're increasing the size of your stadium. Does that mean you can bring down the price of tickets? Because a lot of what makes English football, and Liverpool in particular, special is the sight of a stand which is full of, not necessarily just rich people, but people from the local community who are passionately supporting the team.
Well, I think the most important thing for us is to keep the balance there. We talked about the great success we've had in the sale of media rights, but who knows how long that will continue. What's important is have the right balance. Just like any business, you've got to have diversity in where your revenue comes from, so you're cushioned against downturns. So our expansion right now it's about 20%. With the increased capacity next year, our match day revenue will go to about 30%. I think what's important, as you say, is to have one eye on that and one eye on the people that are in the stadium. Around about 30, 40, 50%, 30% of season ticket holders, I think 30, 35% are Liverpool postcode. 60% Merseyside postcode. So we're still getting the heartbeat of Liverpool in the stadium. But it is also important when you've got such a diverse and rich and long-reaching fan base that you can't deny access to those people. We want to be inclusive to everyone. So it's about getting the balance right. And we don't treat any fan differently. We treat everybody the same, and we want to give as many people the opportunity as we can to come and watch the team.
This new phenomenon of social media obviously allows you to connect with people all over the world and to market the club and the sponsors to them. It also means they can shout back at you about what they think is going on at the club. I mean, for instance, every time John Henry, I think, looks at Twitter, he's got like 600 people telling him to sign Royce. Why don't you sign Royce? Seems like a good idea.
If we did everything that people said on social media, I don't think we'd get any work done.
But does it make it more difficult, though, to run a club with an eye to the long term because of the fact that you're aware of this, millions of people out there who might be angry at a particular thing or maybe don't like the manager anymore, or, that it creates a whole new dimension of pressure on the people who are running the club?
I don't think it does create a whole new dimension of pressure.
You can ignore that.
It's not about ignoring it. I think you always want to listen to your customers, right? So I think it's about using it as a barometer, right? It's a good tool to have a sense of what the feeling is out there, but it's also important to take it in context. We've got very different and diverse people who support the club. People who come to the games are often slightly different in their opinions of people who watch on TV, and people who are further afield have a slightly different view sometimes. But when there's a consistent and common message of either good or bad, then that stands out, and that's a good indicator. Just like any business, people do research in every business, and we have people who just look at, what the messages are, what the
Really?
what the feedback. Yeah, of course. Yeah, when that's what you do, right? When you run any business, you want to listen to your customers, and that doesn't mean we go out and sign a player because it doesn't happen like that. What you'll find is there'll be a whole separation of different fans thinking sign different players. That's slightly different, but if it's talking about what we do on a particular game or what we do with the manager or what, that, of course we look at that to get a sense of what's going on within our customer base.
Well, when you're talking about signing players, that's another area which has been hugely affected by technology in the last few years. So you can track tens of thousands of players. You can keep very detailed statistics on them. And it's transformed that area a lot. I mean, Liverpool is one of the clubs where this has happened very openly. There's a transfer committee there. It's not just one person who's making the decision. You're on that committee. How did it come about? Why did you decide that was the way to go? Because I think there was talk, for instance, that Louis van Gaal would be coming in as a director of football. You decided not to go down that road.
No, that wasn't the case. But in terms of, look, the word transfer committee, I think, got used once and became this idea that we all sit around a table and have a vote on every player we sign, and it couldn't be further from the truth. And, there's only one person has the final say on players at Liverpool Football Club, and right now that's Jurgen Klopp, and that's always been the case, certainly all the time I've been at Liverpool.
Well, I mean, it's interesting you say it's always been the manager who has the final say, because it seems as though it seemed with the previous manager that some of the players maybe he was less keen on than others.
Yeah, but Brendan had the final say on all the players we signed. Well, the point that has been made about committee is really just, and again, I don't think we do anything any different to most or all football clubs, which is, the manager will say, I want to look for somebody in this position. We have a bunch of people, and that's a mix of traditional scouting that everybody is aware of, and more recently, more analytical and digital-based information. And we bring all of that together, as you would imagine, and as was always the case even in the past, just in traditional scouting terms. And we'll look at the 2, 3, 4, whatever it is, best players for that position. We'll show them to the manager. The manager will either go watch or have the scouts go watch those players. We'll narrow it down. And then at that point, I'll become more involved and start talking to clubs, agents, players on the negotiation basis of the deal. And then the manager will choose. And that's never changed. I've been at Liverpool 8 years, and that's pretty much always been it.
It's more
but the committee is, if there is a committee, we don't think of it as a committee, just the media do, but the committee is real, the collaboration of all of those people that all contribute to letting the manager make that decision, and I think actually that's very smart.
There was a discussion on BT Sport actually just before the Liverpool-Chelsea game. It was Fletch, Stav, Rio Ferdinand, Owen Hargreaves and Ray Wilkins, and the three former players, well, Savage is also a former player, I forgot there. Wilkins, Ferdinand and Hargreaves were all convinced that this is the reason they're not managers. You get like sporting directors, transfer committees picking players, and the manager becomes a powerless figure and the job suddenly becomes more grief than it's worth. Do you agree that it's keeping talented men like Rio Ferdinand out of management?
I don't think that at all. I think that any manager in any major league around the world today, you look at the last 3 months or at Liverpool, we've had a game every 3 days. When's the manager going to go fly around the world watching players that he thinks he might sign? When's the manager going to go and negotiate with an agent?
So the job is basically, it's too complicated for one person to do now.
Yeah, of course, but that's not the same as making the decision. The point is you're using smart process and technique and people, all of whom, our scouts, they've all worked in all manner of different football clubs. They have great experience in the game, and they're there to provide the manager with the best tools to make the best decision. I think if I was any of those people on the show that you mentioned, and you were going to be a manager, you'd need that, not just want it, you'd need it.
I can see we're nearly out of time here, Ian, so I just want to ask you, something you mentioned earlier was financial fair play. It seemed to me that was an important thing for Liverpool's owners when they took over the club. They thought, big fan base, UEFA bringing in these rules, we can make a lot of money and compete on that basis. Seems like UEFA have abandoned the rules. What do Liverpool think about that?
Well, they haven't abandoned it. I think there's been some changes, some of which
are letting Manchester City, buy Raheem Sterling, buy Kevin De Bruyne. I mean,
Yeah, but you won't. I guess you won't see the implications of that until this year's, review of their situation, because it works.
Is it annoying from Liverpool's point of view to see this happening?
No, I think. Listen, I think that's for UEFA to decide, isn't it?
Well, you must have your own opinion on it.
We have an opinion, and my opinion would be that FFP is there, to manage that type of activity, and I think UEFA has a responsibility to make sure that that's pulled into place. Some of the rules we've seen starting to have a positive effect. Some of the rules have started, as I said earlier, and you mentioned, to see clubs in a profitable, sustainable way, and that's the ultimate aim of it. And as this thing grows and as they get better at it, I think it was a bit overcomplicated initially. Some of the UEFA meetings I was in, it was very clear that they're now trying to find ways to administrate it more quickly and more effectively. So let's hope that has an effect such that everybody's on a level playing field.
Okay, and well, we're out of time, I can see. You're off to Kazan tomorrow. So best of luck with that. And thanks for joining us at the summit today.
Thanks, Ken.